see. I was talking about
the cow protection.
the cow protection. Yeah, how we were different from city temples.
Yeah.
That's the major difference. Although the city temples may talk about protecting cows occasionally, and certainly they talk about nonviolence. I mean, that's a major part of our philosophy. There's no way that they can practically demonstrate that, or whereas that's a major part of our life here.
Right.
All the milk that we drink and its different products come from our own cows and with milk by hand every day since we've been here since 1974.
Now, when did you get involved with ISKCON and with the Krishna movement?
A temple opened in New Orleans in January of '71.
Okay.
I had briefly seen devotees of Krishna in the 1970 and '71. I heard a little bit about Indian philosophy and stuff while growing up. I wasn't necessarily interested in it. I was pretty common American type of person. Grew up Catholic, went to public schools though. But I became interested after high school.
Right.
After high school, after taking my first philosophy class in college, I had a friend that was more experienced in other cultures around the world. His dad was a geologist, and he traveled around the world and would experience other cultures. So he turned me on, so to speak, to Indian spirituality or philosophy. And I began to take an interest in it. Certain things I was questioning, like eternal damnation, the soul, what is it, and exactly what happens after death. I felt more satisfied with the answers that were provided in Indian philosophical texts. So from there, I started to frequent the temple that had recently opened in New Orleans, and moved in September of '71. Not necessarily with the intention of staying, but just the opportunity to practice yoga with them. And it just ended up leading to more of a commitment.
Right.
As I enjoyed the practices and felt like helping out more, I guess you could say.
Now, how many people, that are coming to this community, live here as opposed to, like, come here on the weekends? Is this a place where, because I think the idea that maybe people might have, and it's, misconceptions or whatever, is that this is a commune or something along those lines. Is that a fair assessment, or is it?
Well, it's similar. It's certainly similar. There are similarities in the sense that it's small. There's similarities to community in general, because it's not completely centralized like maybe the typical commune where people move in and there's one treasury,
right,
and there's some form of government that focuses on a lot of communism. We're a little bit more allow for a lot more independence than that. Most of the people that do come here are people who don't live on the property,
right,
who own their own land around the property, and then it would spread out from there. Most people that come have to travel at least an hour. We do have about 20 families that own their own property, live around the temple, that are initiated Hare Krishna devotees. There are around 30 devotees living on the temple property, including children. So it's not 30 families, but 30 people, maybe 5 families, and 8 or 9 single men. Living on the temple property generally means one's working for the temple
Mm-hmm.
or has a long-standing relationship with the temple, and maybe now they're renting some place and working somewhere else and doing some service that makes it a satisfactory arrangement between the temple and themselves.
Right.
So I guess that's the major difference is we're more dependent on perhaps community at large
Mm-hmm.
than just our own little small selves.
Right. Now, I did want to ask about that. How, that you've got the families that have property around this. How do you guys, as of this temple and this site, are you integrated with the greater community, with the non-Hare Krishna community? Like in what way? Do you, like in Career or Picayune, or I know you've got the restaurant in Gulfport.
Right. Yeah, we're integrated in the sense of any minority group.
Yeah.
We'd be a real small minority group. Us, even a minority group amongst the Indian community,
Mm-hmm.
but there we would, I guess you could say, more naturally fit in because of religious similarities and
Right.
cultural similarities. But we fit into the community at large because all of our individuals do banking and purchasing, and as well as hiring and utilizing the school systems and various other
Okay.
social things. Although self-sufficiency is an ideal that we're always striving for, and to the extent that we would like to offer at our community here, that the temple does own 1,200 acres of property. We've tried to set aside an acreage where there was a model of self-sufficiency going on, an eco-village, so to speak.
Okay, and that's okay. Yeah, I saw a separate website for that. Is that are those guys? No, those guys are connected with the temple, or is that an offshoot of it, or what is the Eco Village?
It's connected. We lease them the property, but the problem that we've had in the past is these things are easy to talk about and to write about, but they're hard to put into practical practice.
Sure.
It's just hard to find people who still want to work draft animals, maybe in the Amish community that's been here since the late 1600s.
That's what kind of reminded me of this. I grew up around Amish in the Midwest, and when I saw the guys out there with the cows, that's what, and the way the garden looked over here. It's like that reminds me of like Amish garden. That was like
we have that as an ideal, and we try to do that. But the Eco Village, I believe, was an attempt to put more of an emphasis on it and to have its own property and practical lifestyle for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
We just have, the people who have tried to do that here have not been able to completely get that off the ground.
Oh, okay.
And although it's dear to their heart, it's hard to find Americans that still have that in their blood, other than as a sentiment.
Sure.
I mean,
Absolutely.
Most of us want to run out and earn a living while money's still available.
Oh, right.
It's hard to find people who just give their life to working with animals and producing food in that way, and not thinking about the opportunity to make money that is available in the world.
Sure. Now, in that regard, I mean, do the devotees, the people that that don't live here, that live in the outside community but support this, is there a setup kind of like tithing? Because I mean, no matter the way it is in America, it's hard to have a self-sufficient thing. That you have to have money involved in it. Is there a larger organization that helps fund this, or is it funded by the the devotees that have?
funded by our congregation,
Okay.
by the devotees. There's certainly no money that comes in from a central organization. A lot of our temples and other individuals who aren't generally a part of our congregation certainly sent donations to help with after Katrina, help us to rebuild. But that's part of life.
Yeah.
We just let people know and there was such a large publication of the catastrophe that people just naturally responded. So it's congregationally based, and
Okay.
that's where our funds come from.
Okay. Well, I know that you've got to go. You've probably got to run and tend to some things.
Let's try to squeeze out maybe 10 more minutes.
Okay. Well, tell me about what's the just kind of for people who may not be familiar with with Hare Krishna. What at a maybe a 10,000-foot level, like what is it about?
Well, Hare Krishna is the ancient culture of India. That's where it originated from. That's where it's still practiced. It was brought to America in its most pure form by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami in 1965. In 1966, he established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in New York City, and from there it spread all over the world. It has a mission simply to teach people the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, as well as to inspire them to chant the names of God that they're familiar with. It certainly is a theistic movement that is teaching love for God and teaching that the panacea in life, the great panacea in life, is simply vibrating the names of God, especially this Hare Krishna mantra, that this helps us to overcome the obstacles each and every one of us face in life, and it helps the individual as a spiritual person to attain a better destiny in the afterlife. That's what it's all about. But on a practical level, we do have a view of sociology that we like to offer. We do have a view of economics that we like to offer, and we do get involved in different issues. And then it also becomes quite an individual thing, depending on the individual devotee himself. Maybe it's an individual devotee who is involved in politics or is involved in some sort of scholastic endeavors. And so just like in the ordinary world, you don't necessarily judge a person by their religion, but you judge them more so perhaps by what they have to offer and what their expertise is, and then religion would be a secondary factor to that.
Right.
So a lot of our movement is open like that. It's not enclosed like in a shell, and we're all the same stereotype of people.
Right. When you say like some of these, I guess, sociological or political leanings of the groups, like what would some of those be, or some of the things that you propose?
Well, sociologically, we have we teach the same teaching that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita, just briefly, but is more expounded upon in the Vedas. And that's a system called Varna and Ashram. Varna meaning occupation, and Ashram meaning social status. So Krishna teaches that every person has a certain Varna, and or occupation. And generally, there are four types, four major categories, of which there are lots and lots of categories under each one of them.
Mm-hmm.
That would be intellectuals or teachers, writers, researchers, people who simply teach others. It would also, that would be one group. Another group would be your politicians and administrators and military type of people, a sort of warrior spirited type of person who whose life is to protect and support and control things for the better in the world. That would be a second group. A third group would be your productive people, such as bankers and agriculturalists, who produce wealth in the world. And the last set would be your skilled workers, your craftsmen, and people who are devoted to one particular type of occupation that is a necessity in the world, but it's certainly not the all in all. So amongst these four occupations, every human being fits into one of those, and Krishna would teach that everyone can perform their occupational duty and at the same time attain perfection by worshiping the Supreme Lord. Not that one has to become a priest or an intellectual or someone who only practices yoga. But Krishna's teachings is that whatever occupation a man finds himself in, he can attain perfection by offering his occupational duty is an act of devotion to the Supreme Lord. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita was spoken to a military man on a battlefield. The social settings are somewhat, we can relate to them in our world. They're simply students, would be the first. The second would be married people. The third would be retired people. The fourth is a little bit unusual, except amongst some religious sects. That would be renounced people who have given up the world entirely and are simply 100% devoted to the service of God.
But okay, and I think that is most people. If you say Hare Krishna, that's what they think is that fourth group.
Yeah.
Is that these are people who have renounced everything and have, chant all day, do yoga all day, or live in service. And that's not really the norm of, that certainly is part of it, but that's not the norm of Hare Krishna.
And that is, to a large degree, what Bhaktivedanta Swami established in 1966.
Mm-hmm.
But there's only a few people that can do that,
right?
Who have that interest and have that opportunity. So along with that, as the movement naturally grew, it meant that all these other things would come into place also, and that those renunciates would always be there, but they certainly don't make up a whole society.
Right.
At that time, they were certainly preaching our simple message of everyone chant Hare Krishna, but they were also looking for people that could give more time to a small beginning international organization that was attempting to teach the world this ancient and wonderful culture. So since those beginning days, the movement has grown tremendously, and it's become more social-like, similar to our everyday world in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think that's what I need.
Hold it off for now, and then I'll go check